There we go. Let's do this. Okay, so what we got here is we have your homework. And so I'm literally going to do the first two problems for you really quick. You've got all of this information. Make sure that you pay attention to what all this information is. But this is essentially the quantitative, we're making a quantitative frequency distribution. And so in order to make a quantitative frequency distribution, just like qualitative, you have classes or you have bins. The qualitative distribution has bins and the quantitative has bins, or better yet, the qualitative has classes and the quantitative has bins or quantitative classes. So the quantitative classes that we have, specifically, I've got two questions here. One is ideal outdoor temperature for eating, and then the other one is ideal outdoor temperature for drinking a hot drink. And so we're going to we're going to make a frequency distribution for both of these. Okay, so I'm going to open up in Excel. I'm going to open up a new worksheet. And I'm going to put right here, ideal, it's going a little slow, ideal temperature for drinking a drink. And now it's frozen. There we go. Ideal outdoor temperature for eating, sorry. And then we are going to do ideal outdoor temperature for drinking a hot drink. So I'm going to copy that. And you can do this by hand. I don't like doing it by hand because it takes a long time. And so I'm just doing it in Excel. So I'm going to unmerge that, put it right over here. And then I'm going to do the same thing right here. And so now I have, whoops, this is merged as well, so we got to unmerge that. So now we have ideal outdoor temperature for eating and ideal outdoor temperature for a hot drink. Now, these aren't necessarily matched up, so it really doesn't matter. These are just 20 random observations, and these are 20 random observations. So I'm going to do something really quick. I'm going to sort this smallest to largest. And it's going to put them all in order from smallest to largest. So if you wanted to, you could put them in order just like this, and do this all by hand if you wanted to, or you can use a pivot table like what I'm about to show you. And I'm going to do the same thing here. I'm going to sort smallest to largest, and once again, I have this information, and I'm actually going to make two different, I'm going to make two different pivot tables. Okay, so the first pivot table that I'm going to make, I'm going to highlight this and I'm going to say insert pivot table. Okay, and it can be a pivot table with just one column. And so I'm going to say, put it into the existing worksheet, and I'm going to put it right there. Okay, so now when I have this pivot table, I'm going to drag this into rows. So we have ideal outdoor temperature for eating, and I'm also going to drag it into values. Now notice when you drag it into values, it defaults to sum. We do not want it as sum. We want it as count. So we're going to right click on this and we're going to do summarize values by count. And right up here, we're going to click in there and we're going to change this and we're going to say frequency. Okay, so now we have the frequency of each individual observation. Now this is all well and good, but this is not going to give us a frequency distribution. What this is giving us is, this is just giving us a count of each of the frequencies. What we want is we want to be able to say, okay, we've got 20 observations and we want to be able to break it up into different bins, so that way we can make something that says, okay, we've got this many observations between here and here, we've got this many observations between this limit and this limit. And so let's take a look back at this worksheet and see what formulas we have to use in order to be able to do that. Okay, so if you watch the other lectures, it'll go through this as well and tell you how to break the number of bins up, or how to determine the number of bins. And so right here, we've got these 4 questions. Okay, so with these 4 questions, we're going to say, how many classes should you have? Well, if we've got 20 right here, there's a rule right here, and it says 2 to the k is greater than n. So the number of classes that you should have should be the first number that is that's greater than the number of observations. What I mean by that is 2 raised to the 4th equals 2 raised to the 4th is only going to give you 16. So you need to have more than 4 classes, or you should have more than 4 classes. What's 2 raised to the 5th? 2 raised to the 5th is 32. So 2 raised to the 5th is the first one that is greater than 20. So therefore, we should have 5 classes. And when I say we should have 5 classes, what I really mean is we should have about 5 classes. 4 might be fine, 5 might be fine, 6 might be fine. Really what it comes down to is, what's the class interval? And to determine the class interval, what you need to do is find the max value. So equals the max value minus the minimum value, and then divide that by the number of classes. Okay, so what that does is it tells you, hey, we've got a range. So what is the range? Equals 82 minus 15. And if you have a perfect range, and you have a perfect number of classes, you start at exactly 15 and you go up by 13 every single time, you will have exactly a perfect set of 5 classes. However, what I would highly suggest, or it's actually 13.4, what I'd highly suggest is that you do something that's really clean, really easy to see. And so for me, I look at this and I say, we either need to go to 10 or we need to go to 15, because 13.4 is messy. Let me show you. So if we come over here, if we come over here and we click on this and we say, okay, we're going to go up to pivot table analysis. And right here, I'm going to click on group. And if I'm going to make this a little bit bigger, group selection, and start at 15, end at 82, and go by 13.4. Okay, this is ugly, just ugly. Nobody wants to read this and be like, okay, what is that? It's really annoying to look at. So we are going to ungroup this, and we're going to make something that's much prettier. And so we're going to group it either by 10, or we're going to group it by 15. And me personally, I look at 13.4 and I'm like, 13.4 is much closer to 15. I'm going to go up and I'm going to round it by 15. So we're going to start at 15 and go from there. And now we have this frequency table, and each one of these classes is 15, has an interval of 15. So it says we should have 13.4, but we're going to put 15. So set the class limits. We already set the class limits. The class limits are 15 all the way up to 30. Now, something else that you need to see here, Control C, Control V, we're missing something right here. What we're missing is 30 up to 44. And that's 0. And the reason why is because there's literally nothing in here that's 30 up to 44. So you're going to have to put that in by hand. And when we do this, it says 15 up to 29, but it's actually 15 up to 30. But 30 is not inclusive. So it's 15 all the way through 29.9999999. And so if I were to create, say for instance, insert a bar chart, and the reason why, well, you've got to use a bar chart for this because of the way that it's set up. But you can make it into a histogram by clicking on this, and this will pop up on the right-hand side. Just double click and make sure that all of them are highlighted, and then decrease the gap width to 0. And so now we have a really nice histogram that shows, okay, this is 15 to 29, 30 to 44, 45 to 59, so on and so forth. A better way to do this would be putting the midpoint. you really should have the midpoint here, and this should be something on the bottom. So you would see what is 30 equals 30 plus 15, which is 45, divided by 2. So that's the midpoint. Once again, 30 up to 44. So you do equals 30 plus 45, which gives you 75. So equals 75 divided by 2. And so really, for all intents and purposes, you should have the midpoints down here and not just the range of the classes. So it shows that there's a continuum down here. So you have each of the midpoints instead of the actual 45 to 59. However, I personally like seeing the 45 to 59 or the 45 up to 60 because I think that it makes it look much cleaner. At the end of the day, charts are more about what tells the most accurate story. So you could do either one, and I think both are perfectly acceptable. So set the class limits and then tally the data to determine the classes. So it already tallied the data for you. So now we've got the frequency, but with quantitative, you also need to do the relative class frequency, and you also need to do the cumulative class frequency. So I'm dragging this down in there 2 more times. And so now I'm going to click on right here, count, make sure that it says count. If it says sum, change it to count. And then show values as percent of column total. So this gives you, when you do percent of column total, it's relative frequency. And then right here, we are going to do show values as percent of running total in ideal outdoor temperature and eating. Okay, so now this gives you the entire frequency distribution. And then what you're going to do is do the exact same thing right here, and I'm going to do this really fast. Insert, pivot table. And I'm just going to do the exact same thing really fast. Remember, change this from sum to count. And then we are going to group. Now this says group at 20 and by 10, which this is the exact same number. So this is all very similar. And what's really important is in just a minute, well, let me do 20 and 10 or 20 and 15. And you'll notice that they're not the same. 15 up to 29, 45 up to 59. You want these to be the same. Because you're comparing classes. When you're comparing 2 classes next to each other, when you're about to make a frequency polygon, you need to make sure that the classes that you have up here and the classes that you have up down here are identical. So I'm going to ungroup, and I'm going to group selection again, and I'm going to do starting at 15 and going by 15. So I want to group them the exact same way. If you're going to be comparing the 2, they've got to be grouped the exact same way. And you notice now we have this information right here. So 15 up to 29, so on and so forth. Control C. And so we've got hot drink. And then we have outdoor meal. And we're going to put this right here, Control C, which once again, you're going to want to do the relative frequency and so on and so forth right down here too. So don't neglect to do that. So, frequency, relative, and then cumulative frequency. Percent of row total, percent of column total, and then show values as, show values as running total in ideal outdoor temperature. And so you've got, you have your 2 you've got your two frequency tables. But to make the frequency polygon, you've got to have all of these classes have to be identical for both of them. And then you have the frequencies for the one, and you also have the frequencies for the next one. And then you highlight the whole table that you have with both right next to each other and do insert. And then you're going to just click on this 2D line, and you'll notice hot drink, outdoor meal, and then put ideal temperature. And so now you got 15 to 29, 30 to 44, 45 to 59, 60 to 74, 45 to 89. Now, I will say with this particular one, I would suggest that you use the midpoints. So right here, 22.5, and then you have 37.5, and then you've got equals plus 15, and I'm just going to drag it down. So I've got all the midpoints. These are all the midpoints for each one of these classes. And so what I can see here is I can go over and read this graph, and I can see, okay, for individuals that they're an average of 52.5, that there is one person whose ideal temperature is in this general area. Or there's one person that, you know, that falls at this midpoint for ideal temperature for having an outdoor meal, but it's also the highest for having a hot drink. So for having a hot drink, people want it to be around 52.5 degrees outside. But for having a meal outside, there's only one person that wants that. But for having an outdoor meal, people want it to be right around 82.5, and there was 12 people that had that. And so you can see this is the number of people that responded that way, and this is the temperature that they had. And you can also, if you click on this, you can go up to the chart design. You can add more information up here. You can add data labels, so on and so forth, and put more information as well. And if you're going to, you know, present this to somebody else, I'd highly suggest that you do that. So that's how you do this. Make sure that you do both frequency tables. Make sure that you do one of these histograms for both. Yeah.